Russian and U.S. forces are growing closer and closer to direct confrontation with a recent attack on a U.S. drone operating over international waters. Russian spies have been caught in several countries planning sabotage, and banks worldwide are teetering on the edge of failing. It's now been clearly proven that China is arming Russia, and NATO might be getting some new members soon. All that and more in another giveaway in this video segment of the news you need to know. Russia's attack. In a high-profile confrontation between the United States and Russia, a Russian Su-27 flanker fighter jet and a US MQ-9 Reaper remotely piloted aircraft, or UAV, were involved in an in-flight collision over the Black Sea. Now, of course, Russia denied any collision occurred. It also denied that it harassed the unmanned and allegedly unarmed drone. Now, the U.S. European Command released early Thursday a video footage from the drone where the Su-27 is seen dumping fuel as it swoops past a drone. It did this at least twice over half an hour's time in an attempt to bring down the drone. And the intent was to throw the drone off course or disable its surveillance capabilities. The encounters and the flybys did eventually result in the Russian fighter jet colliding with and damaging the drone's propeller. Russia denies this claim and maintains that the drone attempted to maneuver too sharply and plummeted into the Black Sea, though the video shows a different story. After one of the fuel dumping approaches, as the Russian jet gets closer, the video cuts out for about 60 seconds following what EUCOM indicates was the impact. When the feed was restored, the propeller appeared damaged. And the American EU operators allegedly wiped any gathering intelligence from the drone and guided it to a crash landing in the Black Sea at an approximate depth of around 5,000 feet. Now, the exact location has yet to be released, but the approximations put it nowhere near Russian territory, claimed territory, or even Russian forces. Not even close. And if the approximations are to be believed, it operated in international airspace over international waters. The Russian ambassador was summoned to D.C. to elaborate on the incident. He claimed the drone could carry bombs, so the Russian reaction was natural, given how close it was to Russian territory. He also claimed that there was no collision. Still, Russian social media and agencies called for the Russian pilot to be rewarded with 1 million rubles for the downing of the drone. Now, intelligence indicates that the orders to harass and perhaps even bring down the drone came directly from Russian leadership. Now, whether the collision was ordered or accidental pilot error remains unclear. Any single incident of these close encounters can immediately spark a larger war. And I think that's the big story here. Seemingly minor events like these can be the straw that break the camel's back. Though these administrations may retaliate covertly, and the Pentagon has released a video to show Russia's aggression and untruths, many are calling for an escalation of the direct confrontation and admonishing the Biden administration for being weak. Is retaliation in order for this event? What do you think? Is retaliation in order for this event? What will come of this will be many more drones flying over the Black Sea with the potential for more significant escalation. The US and EU will want to demonstrate that they're not intimidated by the Russians. And eventually, a Russian fighter jet will be down due to one of these altercations. And probably what will happen is Russia will claim that the United States shot it down. Truth be told, they might, as these drones can be armed with missiles. And if this scenario does occur, it plays directly into Putin's hands as he continues to struggle to maintain they're attacking us, we aren't attacking them propaganda campaign. Even if it doesn't play out in this exact way, it reminds me of riding in the backseat of a car with your sibling. If you remember that or you had that unpleasurable experience growing up, they punch you in the arm and immediately scream that you hit them. And eventually, mom or dad is going to pull that car over and someone's going to get a whooping. Now, wars in the past have started over smaller events. What do you think? How close are we to an all-out altercation between Russian and American forces? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Russian plots and saboteurs. U.S. intelligence has determined that the Kremlin was plotting to topple another European democracy. Russian actors, some with current ties to Russian intelligence, are seeking to stage and use protests in Moldova as a basis to foment a manufactured insurrection against the Moldovan government, said John Kirby, the spokesperson for the National Security Council, at a White House briefing. This is not new information for many, especially in Moldova's leadership. Police arrested 54 demonstrators in anti-government protests. Moldova is one of the poorest countries in the region, and it's a well-established fact that many of the Moldovans are paid the equivalent of about 20 euros or $19 per day, as the German paper Deutsche Welle reported. Other sources have corroborated this, and Moldovan journalists have posted online videos of drunken demonstrators boasting about the money that they had received. These payouts have been tied to the pro-Russian oligarch Elon Shor, who hails from the town of Orhi in Moldova. According to the Western intelligence official, the Kremlin aims to return Moldova to Russia's sphere of influence. Putin's arsenal in this regard is not just tanks and fighter jets, as with Ukraine, but the weapons of political warfare, infiltrating the country with Russian intelligence operatives and fomenting anti-democratic activity using paid or ideological loyal agents of influence. Recently, the Moldovan border police said that it had stopped a suspected mercenary from the Wagner group from entering the country in a week in which 181 other foreigners tried to do likewise. Now, this tactic of infiltration and destabilization is right out of the leaked playbook crafted by Russia's general staff and Moscow's primary intelligence service, the SFB, the SVR, and GRU. The infiltration technique was used in Crimea, was planned in Belarus, and is part of a general plot to consolidate post-Soviet states into a collective security treaty organization set up like NATO, where an attack on one member is considered an attack on all members. So long as Russia has breakaway troops in the Transnistria region of Moldova along the Ukrainian border, these infiltration and destabilization tactics are going to continue. The European Union is preparing a new military aid package for Moldova, which will include a long-range radar aimed at detecting Russian cruise missiles potentially flying over the country on their way to strike targets in Ukraine. And we previously warned about a potential flare-up in Moldova on this channel. Now, many of the recently leaked reports corroborate Putin's desire to destabilize this region as part of his larger plan to restore the former Soviet Union. And the Russian spy network of saboteurs has been very active in many countries. The Polish Internal Security Agency has exposed a spy network that worked for Russia and was tasked with preparing sabotage operations in Ukraine and was actively working in Poland. They'd set up multiple cameras on rail networks near an airport in the country's southeastern region. And this agency also indicated that other cameras had been installed throughout Poland. 6 alleged spies had been detained as the investigation continues. Russia is undoubtedly looking for ways to stop the flow of Western armaments to support Ukraine, which flows through Poland. 4 MiG-29 fighter jets are being transferred from Poland to Ukraine in the next few days, which will anger Moscow. Poland will replace the jets in its inventory with South Korea F-850s and America's F-35s. Air-launching precision weapons would allow Ukraine to turn what has so far primarily been a land war into a 3-dimensional battle space, forcing Russia to react with more of its own forces and equipment. It's hoped that these MiGs, the 14 Leopard tanks, the 31 M1 Abrams tanks, and more armaments we may never know about will direct the course of the war in a spring offensive in favor of Ukraine. Given Russia's continued provocation, their exposed spy network, and plans to destabilize other countries, many apprehensions will likely be set aside to allow a massive influx of Western weapons into Ukraine. Though I'm sure that Ukraine is making promises not to strike Russian targets outside of its pre-war borders, they will, at some point, deploy these armaments and fighter jets and strikes deeper and deeper into Russian territory. Ukrainian MiG-29s now carry U.S.-supplied arms, including AGM-88 high-speed anti-radiation missiles, or HARMs, which can home in and eliminate air defense radars from more than 50 miles away. Damaging or destroying the radars, which usually operate with surface-to-air missile systems, would give Ukrainian aircraft greater freedom to fly. Now, is any of this really different than the dark operations of the CIA or the MI6? What do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Atrocities and War Crimes. A report by the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on Ukraine is being submitted to the International Criminal Court in The Hague to determine whether the atrocities rise to the level of crimes against humanity. Based on more than 500 interviews, satellite images, and visits to detention sites and graves, the report details atrocities too horrific to really even mention here, ranging from rape and torture to the deportation of children. The International Court is expected to seek the arrest and press for the criminal prosecution of many key figures revealed in the documents. The report found that some 16,000 children have been unlawfully transferred and deported from Ukraine, citing a Ukrainian government figure. Russia denies the charge, saying it has evacuated people voluntarily from Ukraine. The report also found that Ukraine forces had committed a small number of violations, including what appeared to be indiscriminate attacks and tortures of prisoners of war. NATO grows. Finland's bid to join NATO is closely being approved by the two remaining holdouts of Turkey and Hungary. Sweden's is on hold, and Turkey is still upset with Sweden for harboring Kurds who fought against Turkish rule. Still, the Swedish Prime Minister said on Wednesday that he hoped for rapid ratification of NATO membership for his country following elections in Turkey. There does remain a strong possibility that in the wake of the Turkish leadership's response to the recent massive earthquake, the Turkish president will be replaced in the May elections. Now, even if he's not, the Swedish government, for its part, presented a draft to tighten anti-terror legislation on Thursday. Under the new rules, involvement in a terrorist organization or financing such involvement is punishable by several years in prison. That's going to go a long way to calm Turkish fears. Finland's approval is near complete, even if the two countries don't enter NATO together as planned. Finland shares the longest European Union border with Russia at 832 miles. As we reported earlier, Finland is attempting to build a significant fence along the border due to a rise in Russians seeking to escape conscription to fight in Ukraine. Their other motivation for a tighter border, even in remote places along the 832-mile stretch, is in response to what I mentioned earlier concerning Russian infiltrators in Moldova, Ukraine, and Crimea. Moscow's well-established tactic is sending infiltrators to disrupt and sabotage nearby countries. The tactic has been so well known for years, even before the playbook was leaked. How will Russia respond when one of these countries enters NATO? Is Turkey holding their admittance up to placate Russia? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Global bank failures. There's the old saying, privatize profits and socialize losses. What we see in recent days speaks to that philosophy. The Fed has set up a program to prevent banks from engaging in a fire sale of sovereign debt to obtain funding. Treasury 2-year yields have tumbled more than 60 basis points this week amid speculation that the Fed will skip an interest rate hike next week as it seeks to stabilize the banking sector. Now, this has caused the most massive 2-day drop in the Treasury market since the flash crash of 1987. The goal here is to try to instill confidence in the U.S. banking system, but will make inflation continue to rise. After Moody's downgrading of 6 banks, it felt were overexposed to these banking problems, their equities dipped to more than half. Now, this is correcting itself somewhat as larger banks have stepped in to shore up these smaller banks. First Republic, for instance, has received $30 billion in deposits from several big banks. Likewise, Credit Suisse, one of Europe's largest banks, has suffered a 30% decline in shares when concerns arose about its material weaknesses. Credit Suisse's largest investor, Saudi National Bank, said it would not provide the Swiss bank any further financial assistance, as that would push it above the 10% regulatory threshold. Shares roared back when the Swiss Central Bank agreed to loan the bank up to 50 billion francs, or $54 billion, to bolster confidence. Now, the rapid response and circling of wagons differs from what happened at the start of the global financial crisis 15 years ago when the United States authorities allowed the investment banking giant Lehman Brothers to collapse. Governments and big banks better understand their exposure in these smaller banks and the house of cards that they've built amongst each other. Banks around the world are reeling, and some of the biggest declines in these banks occurred in France, Spain, and Germany. Several Italian banks on Wednesday were also subject to automatic trading stoppages. One outcome of this banking crisis is that it is causing mortgage rates to decline from their recent highs. Now, this could heat up or at least warm up the housing market, which has slowed recently, but again, losses tend to get socialized. While the average consumer can expect more inflation, higher fees, and overall tighter credit, according to the polls, most people want to see some accountability for these major investors and bankers. And whether we're going to see that in the future is still unknown, but I wouldn't bank on it. There's been a lot of swift action and intervention from big banks, federal banks, and governments. The question now is whether that will be enough to stop the hemorrhaging and the evaporation of confidence in our current banking systems and financial institutions. What do you think? Has your bank contacted you to claim or reinforce its strength and solvency? We'd love to hear your experience in the comments section below. If you want to know how this is unfolding in the U.S. markets, I would encourage you to look at the recent videos on this channel. Now, have we seen the worst of this banking crisis this year, or are we at the tipping point and still moving forward? What do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Giveaway. For this week's giveaway, we'll give away a 2-pack of Motorola Talkabout Radio walkie-talkies. To be eligible for a chance to win in this giveaway, just simply post a comment below and click the like button. Next week, I'll use a tool to draw a winner from the comments on this video randomly. Now, I'm not going to reach out to you unless your name appears on the screen next week. And you must have your email address listed on the About tab of your YouTube profile. Please ignore and report any comments telling you that you've won or to contact me through WhatsApp or Telegram because it's not me. Now, for the last video's winner of the Survival tabs, the winner is the subscriber Jesse Padilla. I'll reach out to you shortly to get that sent to you. China. Fears of direct material support of Russia from China have now been confirmed. China North Industries Group Corporation Limited, one of the country's largest state-owned defense contractors, has been reported to have shipped 1,000 rifles in June of last year to a Russian company that are modeled after the M16 but tagged as civilian hunting rifles. So, to claim these were intended to be used for hunting is nothing but deception on China's part. Recent reports reveal that Russian entities also received 12 shipments of drone parts from Chinese companies and over 12 tons of Chinese body armor routed via Turkey in late 2022. Now, both are in perfect timing for Putin's troop buildups and conscription efforts. Embassy spokesman Liu Pengju, despite these recent revelations, maintained that China did not create the crisis. It is not a party to the crisis, and it has not provided weapons on either side of the conflict. Last December, Russia imported more than 800 tons of body armor from Turkey. And other body armor supplies flowed through the United Arab Emirates. Russia has imported microchips, thermal vision devices, and spare parts like gas turbine engines from countries ranging from Serbia to China to Myanmar. We're going to probably continue to see these supplies and armaments flow into Russia, and we'll likely see them soon on the battlefield of Ukraine. We will know more as Chinese President Xi Jinping visits Vladimir Putin as early as next week. Xi is touting a Chinese-style modernization that does not follow the old path of colonial plunder or the hegemony of strong countries. This comes after China brokered an agreement to resume diplomatic ties between longtime rivals Saudi Arabia and Iran after a series of secret meetings held in Beijing, an announcement that surprised the United States. China continues to blame U.S. hegemony for the war in Ukraine and not Russia. And at the same time, China is becoming increasingly aggressive in the South China Sea. To counter this, Australia, the United States, and the UK inked a $254 billion deal to provide Australia with nuclear-powered submarines. This deal replaces Australia pulling out of the $66 billion deal with France. They've mended that damaged relationship with France by granting greater access to bases on the Australian continent and through a greater tempo of joint military exercises. Now, China continues to stretch its one China policy and isolate Taiwan. And most recently, following a deal to build a major hydroelectric dam in Honduras, the Latin American country switched its diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to China. China is using its deal-making abilities in multiple ways to demonstrate its prowess as a superpower and sway global opinion. Even as the communist country claims to seek only peace, state-sponsored hackers have repeatedly attacked U.S. companies. China routinely denies hacking into businesses or governments in other countries and accuses the United States and its allies of the practice that itself is doing. According to a recent report released by Google, China has on a regular basis and routinely violated U.S. corporate systems, firewalls, networks, and software. In the recently discovered series of hacks, the systems that were often breached were designed to protect companies. U.S. lawmakers are determined not to let that happen on American soil. Chinese buyers with over 383,000 acres hold less than 1% of foreign-owned U.S. farm, forest, pasture, non-agricultural land, the Farm Service Agency said in 2021 report. Still, there have been some rather substantial purchases by China of large swaths of land very close to U.S. military bases. 140,000 acres in Texas by business controlled by a billionaire Chinese real estate developer, and 370,000 acres in Grand Forks, North Dakota, to operate a corn milling operation. Legislators are seeking to tighten regulations and disclosures to get ahead of future purchases. Now, the news today is showing a lot of escalation and not much de-escalation. Many countries are gearing up for a lengthy world war, so you should be preparing as if darker days are still ahead. Attacks on financial systems, acts of sabotage and deception, and secret deals and exchanges are all surfacing, pointing to several years of this worsening before it gets any better. I would encourage you to use this time to prepare what you can on your own home front before one of these larger incidents arrives at your doorsteps. And to be honest, that's the thing that concerns me at the most at this time. is, again, we've lived in a time of relative peace and prosperity over the last several decades, and we're seeing a clear escalation and a clear sign, an indication of these alignments that are happening between nations. It's pretty much becoming Russia, China, and these other countries lining up against the West. The world structure that has been in place since 1945, that was established post-World War II by the United States, it's afforded a lot of people a lot of opportunities around the world. And I'm not saying that it's come without problems. There's been a lot of issues. But all that to say, as this world order is being challenged, we're going to see a lot of conflict. We're going to see a lot of problems arise as a result. And my word of encouragement is the same as always. Prepare as much as you can with what's in your means. Learn develops. We've, again, got a playlist. If you go to our playlist, you'll see our gardening series. Do what you can. Start now. As I always tell people, the best time to prepare is 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. But the second best time is to prepare is now, is today. Take advantage of the time that you have. If you have any feedback, any thoughts, any questions, feel free to post those below. And as always, stay safe out there.